1. An unhappy household. Happy families are all alike, but unhappy families are unhappy in their own unique ways. The Oblonsky household was one such unhappy family. Dolly, the wife, had found out 3 days ago that her husband was having an affair with the French tutor. She announced that she could not go on living in the same house with her husband. She had stayed in her room, and her husband, Prince Stepan Oblonsky, had stayed away from home during the day. Their 5 children ran wild around the house. The cook quit, and the other servants were thinking of doing the same. On the 3rd morning after the quarrel, Prince Oblonsky, who was called Stiva by his friends, woke up on the leather couch in his study. He had just had a wonderful dream, and he was smiling as he reached up for his robe. Suddenly, he realized that he was in his study, and his robe was in his wife's bedroom. The smile on his face vanished.
It's all my fault,
Stiva thought.
Dolly will never forgive me. What have I done? But the real tragedy is that I cannot really be blamed.
Stiva remembered how he had come home from the theater 3 nights ago. He had found his wife in their upstairs bedroom with a letter from the French tutor in her hand. The memory of the look of pain on his wife's face and the tears in her eyes still stabbed his heart. The affair with the French tutor was not the first for Stiva. He was 34 years old and was quite handsome and charming. Women younger than his wife were constantly attracted to him. The biggest problem was that he was no longer in love with his wife. She was a good wife and mother, but she was no longer a beautiful young woman. Stiva rang the bell for his servant, who came in with a telegram. Stiva opened it, and his face quickly brightened when he read the contents. His sister Anna was coming for a visit. Anna lived in St. Petersburg with her husband and 8-year-old son. Dolly really liked Anna. Stiva had invited his sister to visit and tried to solve the current situation. The telegram said that Anna would arrive in Moscow by train later today. Stiva dressed and then opened the door from his study to his wife's bedroom. Dolly was standing in front of an open wardrobe. She was trying to decide if she should pack her things and leave with the children. In spite of her anger, Stiva was her husband, and in her heart, Dolly still loved him.
Anna is coming today,
said Stiva in a soft voice. Well, what is that to me? I can't see her, exclaimed Dolly. I am going to take the children and leave this house. You can live here with your mistress.
Dolly, please understand,
said Stiva. Understand? You are a repulsive, hateful man.
Dolly, please think of the children. It would ruin them to grow up without their father. Don't punish them. Punish me. I'm the guilty one.
Stiva pleaded. Without a word, Dolly moved toward the door.
Dolly, one more word,
Stiva said as Dolly opened the door. Go away! Screamed Dolly, and she slammed the door closed behind her. Sadly, Stiva went downstairs and told his servant to prepare a room for Anna. Then he left for his office at one of Moscow's courthouses. As a student, Stiva was intelligent, but he had been lazy and mischievous. However, most of the rich and powerful in Russia knew his father, and these connections helped him get a high-paying job in the government. Stiva was not a man who had great ambitions, and he did not work hard. He relied on his charming manners and quick wits to make people happy. At noon, Stiva was leaving a meeting when he saw a broad-shouldered man running lightly up the stairs toward him. Stiva smiled in pleasure.
Levin, what a pleasant surprise! What are you doing in Moscow?
Said Stiva.
I must ask you something.
Said Levin. Suddenly, he seemed to be shy.
Would you happen to know what the Shcherbakskys are doing?
Stiva immediately knew why Levin had come back to Moscow. It was no secret to him that Levin was in love with Princess Kitty Shcherbatsky, Dolly's younger sister.
The Shcherbakskys are having a dinner party tonight at 8 o'clock.
Replied Stiva with a smile.
I will send over a servant to announce your arrival in Moscow. Of course, you will be invited. Kitty will be there. In the meantime, let's go get lunch.
Over lunch, Stiva asked,
So, why did you stay away from Moscow for so long? And why have you suddenly returned?
As you have guessed, I am in love with Kitty.
Replied Levin.
I left Moscow because I thought she would not agree to marry me. Her mother especially doesn't seem to like me. But I couldn't stop thinking about her.
Levin sighed. Then he burst out.
I've come back to ask Kitty to marry me. Do you think there's any possibility she will say yes?
Of course.
Said Stiva.
Dolly told me that she thinks Kitty loves you.
That's wonderful.
Cried Levin, who looked both relieved and surprised.
There's just one thing you must know.
Said Stiva.
You have a rival. His name is Count Vronsky. He's a young cavalry officer with many powerful connections. Kitty's mother really likes him, but I am sure that Kitty loves you more. Go to the dinner party early before Vronsky arrives and ask her to marry you. Good luck.
Stiva went off to meet Anna at the train station, while Levin went back to his apartment. Chapter 2. A Chance Meeting. At the train station, Oblonsky met Count Vronsky while waiting for the train from St. Petersburg.
Who are you meeting?
Asked Vronsky.
I've come to meet a pretty woman.
Replied Stiva.
My sister, Anna.
Oh, Karenin's wife.
Said Vronsky.
Yes, so you know her.
No, not really. I don't remember.
Said Vronsky. The name Karenin gave him the impression of someone very official and boring.
But you must know my respected brother-in-law. He's a high government official.
Said Stiva.
Yes.
Replied Vronsky.
I know him by reputation and by sight. I know that he's quite clever and religious. Anyway, I am here to welcome my mother.
Their conversation was interrupted by the sound of the train approaching. When it came to a stop, a young guard jumped off near Vronsky. Vronsky asked the guard which carriage the Countess Vronsky was in. The guard pointed, and Vronsky went to the carriage door. Just as he reached it, he stepped aside for a lady getting out. At a glance, Vronsky knew that the lady was very wealthy. He looked closely at her lovely face because he thought he had seen something special there. As he did, she also looked at him and gave him a friendly, curious look. Vronsky nodded and then climbed the steps into the carriage. His mother, an old lady with black eyes and curls, smiled at him with her thin lips. "So, you got my telegram," she said. "Are you well?"
Did you have a good journey?
asked Vronsky as he sat down beside her. Just then, the lady Vronsky had seen leaving came back into the carriage, looking confused. "Have you found your brother?" asked Countess Vronsky. Suddenly, Vronsky knew that this was Anna Karenina, Oblonsky's sister.
"Your brother is just outside,"
said Vronsky.
"Please wait here, and I will call him."
Anna smiled and sat next to the Countess. Vronsky left the train and saw Oblonsky through the crowd. He called him over and said,
"Your sister is sitting next to my mother in this carriage."
As soon as Anna saw her brother from the window, she came out of the carriage and ran to him. She threw her arms around him and kissed his cheeks warmly. Vronsky helped his mother down the carriage steps. "She's quite charming, isn't she?" said the Countess to her son. Then to Anna she said, "I can speak plainly at my age. I must confess, I have lost my heart to you." Anna looked delighted. She kissed the Countess and then offered her hand to Vronsky. He kissed it and felt a great joy. Just then, there was a great commotion as the station master and several conductors ran past. Their faces were pale and frightened. Vronsky suggested the women go back into the carriage. Then he and Stiva followed the train officials to the front of the train. It was clear that something terrible had happened. A guard had been crushed to death under the train as it had arrived. At the sight of his dead body, Stiva looked very upset, as if he were about to cry.
"Oh, this is terrible!"
he exclaimed. There was nothing Vronsky or Stiva could do, so they returned to the carriage where Anna and the Countess were waiting.
"It was terrible,"
said Stiva, as he told Anna and the Countess what had happened.
"And his poor widow was there. She threw herself on his body and said she had a large family. What an awful thing."
"Isn't there anything anyone can do?" asked Anna, her eyes filling with tears. Vronsky looked at her and immediately left the carriage. When he returned a few minutes later, Stiva was telling the ladies about the latest play in Moscow. They left the carriage together and walked toward the exit. As they reached the doors, the station master came running up behind them. Addressing Count Vronsky, he said,
"You gave my assistant a large sum of money, sir. What did you want us to do with it?"
"Well, it's for the widow and her children, of course,"
replied Vronsky.
"You gave money?"
asked Stiva.
"Very kind, very kind."
Each couple took a separate carriage from the station to their respective houses. On the carriage ride home, Anna asked, "Have you known Vronsky long?"
"Yes, you know he's hoping to marry Kitty."
At this news, Anna's mood changed. "Really?" she said softly. "Now let's talk about your affairs." Stiva told Anna everything. When they arrived at his house, he dropped her off and drove back to his office at the courthouse. Although Dolly had told Stiva she did not care if Anna came or not, she was relieved to see her. "After all, it's not Anna's fault," she told herself. "I only know her as a dear friend." When Anna came in, Dolly greeted her eagerly and kissed her. "Dolly, I'm so glad to see you," said Anna. Anna listened very sympathetically to Dolly. and Dolly felt much better after telling the story of her troubles. "Oh, what shall I do, Anna?" asked Dolly when she had finished. "Please help me." "Dolly, Stiva is still in love with you," said Anna. "I am his sister, and I can read his heart. He wasn't in love with the other woman. He didn't betray you in his heart." "But what if it happens again?" asked Dolly. "Would you forgive him?" "I don't think it will happen again," replied Anna. Then she thought for a moment. "Yes, I would forgive him." In the end, Anna persuaded Dolly to forgive Stiva. Just after Dolly agreed to forgive her husband, Kitty arrived. She had come over to see her older sister Dolly. Kitty had never formally met Anna, but she knew who she was. Kitty hoped this fashionable woman from St. Petersburg would not think she was a silly young girl. Anna did like Kitty, and they both got along well. All three of them chatted for about an hour. Before Kitty left, she told Anna, "Oh, you must come to the grand ball next week. Many important and fashionable people will be there." "And your Count Vronsky?" asked Anna. Kitty blushed. "I had the pleasure of meeting him at the train station today," said Anna. "He seems to be a very handsome and generous man. I think I will stay for the grand ball next week." Kitty left, and Dolly told the servants to prepare dinner. That night, Dolly, Stiva, Anna, and all the children had dinner together. Dolly also called her husband Stiva, which she had not done for 3 days. This pleased Stiva very much, and he was grateful to Anna. Across town, the Shchebarsky's butler announced Levin's arrival at 7:30. When Kitty heard this, she felt excited but was also afraid. She knew why he had come early. Levin entered the hall and found Kitty standing there alone. He looked at her with excitement, but he was also shy. "My dear Levin, I heard you had returned to Moscow," exclaimed Kitty. "How long will you stay this time?"
"Well, that depends on you,"
he said.
"I mean, what you should understand is, I came to be my wife."
Kitty felt overjoyed, which surprised her. She was very fond of Levin, whom she had known since childhood. However, she thought of Levin more like a brother than a possible husband. She did not expect to feel such strong emotions at his marriage proposal. But then she remembered Vronsky, and she looked at Levin steadily. "No, it cannot be," she said softly. "Forgive me." Levin stood still for a moment. Then he said with a broken heart,
"No, of course you can't. I understand."
Levin was about to leave when a handsome man in a uniform came in. Levin watched Kitty greet Vronsky. Her eyes and face were bright as she looked at him. He could see that Kitty truly loved Vronsky. The next week, the grand ball was being held at a large palace in Moscow. As the guests began to arrive, the sounds of their voices and laughter filled the rooms and halls. Kitty and her mother arrived fashionably late. Kitty was the perfect image of beauty in her black dress. Many people looked at her admiringly as she walked up the steps with her mother to the grand ballroom. At once, Kitty saw that the most important people at the ball were talking together in one corner of the room. Stiva was there with Dolly. Anna, in a beautiful black velvet dress, was also there. She did not look like a woman who had an 8-year-old son. He was also there, Kitty's love, Count Vronsky. Kitty's heart beat a little faster at the sight of the uniformed count. As Kitty joined the group, Anna smiled at her and complimented her dress and beautiful appearance. Count Vronsky asked Kitty to dance. While they danced, they did not talk about anything important, but Kitty was not worried. She was sure that he would ask her to dance the most important dance of the evening, the mazurka. Kitty was sure that Count Vronsky would propose marriage to her at that time. After this first dance, Kitty had to dance with several young men who were competing to dance with her. She could not refuse them. As she danced with one of these young men, she suddenly saw Anna dancing with Count Vronsky next to her. Kitty became slightly alarmed, and she watched Anna and Vronsky closely. Anna was looking up at the Count with bright eyes. Every time he spoke to her, she seemed to be filled with joy, and her eyes became brighter. To Kitty's horror, the same expression of excitement and happiness was reflected on Vronsky's face. When the mazurka finally began, Kitty was asked to dance by an old family friend, Kerensky. She accepted, as she could see Vronsky was already dancing with Anna. The more Kitty looked at them, the more she realized that they were very attracted to each other. Kitty was heartbroken. Later in the dance, Anna and Kitty found themselves dancing next to each other. Anna reached out her hand to Kitty, but Kitty ignored it and moved away. Suddenly, Anna saw the look of despair and jealousy on Kitty's face. After the dance, Anna told Vronsky she would not stay for dinner. "Thank you for the wonderful time," she said. "Now I must go home and prepare for my journey back home tomorrow."
So you really are leaving tomorrow?
Asked Vronsky. "Yes, I must," replied Anna. Her eyes shone, and her smile warmed Vronsky's heart. Early the next morning, Anna sent a telegram to her husband, telling him she would leave today for St. Petersburg on the overnight train. "I must go," she told Dolly, "and I must confess the reason for my sudden departure. I have ruined it for Kitty and Vronsky. She's jealous of me, and I made the ball last night torture for her. But it's really not my fault, or at least just a little bit." "You sound like my Stiva," exclaimed Dolly. "But remember, Anna, I'll always love you as my dearest friend. I won't forget what you did for me." That night, as Anna rode on the train home, she felt relieved and happy to be going home. "Soon I will see my son Serioza and my husband," she said to herself. "Then my simple life will continue as before." Chapter 3. Romance in St. Petersburg. There was a terrible snowstorm outside. Anna tried to read a novel, but she could not concentrate. She listened to the sound of the train and fell asleep. Suddenly, she realized that the train was coming to a stop on the way to St. Petersburg. After a while, a man in a military overcoat approached her.
"May I assist you, lady?"
he said. Anna recognized Vronsky as he spoke. "I didn't know you were coming to St. Petersburg," exclaimed Anna joyously. "What business do you have there?"
"Can you not guess?"
asked Vronsky.
I have come to be where you are.
Anna felt torn between joy and fear. For a long time she was silent. Then she said, "You should not say that, and I beg you, if you are a gentleman, to forget it as I shall forget it." With that, she closed her eyes and tried to sleep. Early the next morning, Alexei Alexandrovich Karenin was waiting for his wife on the train platform. He saw Anna as soon as she stepped from her carriage. Anna also saw her husband immediately. The familiar feeling of dissatisfaction upon seeing her husband arose in Anna. To Anna, her husband was cold, without feeling or passion. Vronsky stepped down from the train and saw Karenin take hold of his wife's arm as if she were a piece of property. For the first time, Vronsky came face to face with the fact that there was a man attached to Anna. He too felt a disagreeable sensation when he saw Karenin. Vronsky approached the couple slowly and said,
Did you have a good night?
"Yes, thank you," replied Anna. Her eyes lit up when she spoke to him. Anna looked at her husband to see if he knew Vronsky. Karenin had an unpleasant look on his face. He disliked the interruption, and he was trying to remember Vronsky's face. "This is Count Vronsky," said Anna. "I made his acquaintance in Moscow."
Ah, we have met before,
said Karenin without feeling.
I hope I may visit you,
said Vronsky, more to Anna than Karenin.
We'd be delighted,
said Karenin in a cold voice.
You may find us home on Mondays.
Then he turned, and still holding Anna's arm, they left the station. When Anna and her husband arrived home, Seryoza, their son, was very happy to see his mother. Anna told him about her visit to Moscow and gave him some presents. In St. Petersburg, Anna attended operas, balls, and dinner parties with the rich and powerful in Russian society. Count Vronsky's family was one of the richest in Russia, and he also showed up at many of the same events as Anna. He was the commander of an army regiment, and he moved his men to St. Petersburg. Upon her arrival in St. Petersburg, Anna had tried to forget her attraction to Vronsky. However, every time she met him at a dinner party or ball, she was excited and happy to see him. Soon she realized that Vronsky was the main interest in her life. Anna and Vronsky became very good friends and did many things together. Even when Karenin was too busy to go to the theater or other outings, Vronsky would escort Anna. In this way, Anna and Vronsky became lovers. They also became the subject of much gossip among the highest circles of Russian society. Karenin noticed his wife's behavior. He was very worried about what other people might think of him. However, he was not a bold man, so he decided the best way for him to deal with the situation was to ignore it. One day, Vronsky called on Anna when Karenin was away. He found her on the back porch of her house. Her lovely face looked red and hot.
What's the matter?
Asked Vronsky.
Are you ill?
No, said Anna. I'm pregnant. It's your child. Vronsky turned pale.
We must put an end to our secrecy. Ask your husband for a divorce, and we will get married,
he said. He would never agree to that, replied Anna. He will not allow me to disgrace his family name.
We have to tell him,
said Vronsky.
We cannot continue like this.
And then what would we do? Asked Anna. Run away? Vronsky thought for a moment.
Yes, that is the only solution then. If he doesn't give you a divorce, we will leave Russia.
Vronsky did not know that this would be very difficult for Anna. She loved Vronsky, but she did not want to be away from her son. However, there was no choice for her. When Anna told her husband she loved Vronsky, Karenin was horrified. Until now, he had tried to ignore his wife's relationship with Vronsky. Anna's direct announcement of her love for Vronsky and the fact that she was going to have his child forced him to confront the situation. Karenin sent his wife to their summer house outside Moscow. He told her he needed time to think. After much thought in his calculating way, Karenin decided that he should force Anna to remain with him.
I must not be unhappy, but also Anna should not be happy.
He thought,
This is the best solution. I am not getting rid of a guilty wife, but am giving her a chance to mend her ways.
He quickly wrote a letter to Anna.
Whatever your behavior has been, I do not think that I have the right to cut the bonds that God has made between us. The family cannot be broken because of the sin of one of the partners. Our life must continue as before. I am sure you regret your behavior and will not continue with it. If you do, I am sure you can imagine what the future will hold for you and your son. I ask you to return to our home in St. Petersburg as soon as possible. Karenin.
Anna returned home as her husband had instructed. She felt helpless in her current situation. My life was miserable before, thought Anna. What will it be like now that Karenin knows I was unfaithful? And what about the baby? Anna and her husband lived in the same house, and they met every day for dinner so that the servants would not gossip. However, Anna continued to see Vronsky away from the house. Karenin knew this. He only told Anna that Vronsky was not welcome at the house. One day, Vronsky received a note from Anna. I feel sick and unhappy. I cannot leave the house, but I want to see you very much. Come by before 10. My husband will be busy in a meeting until then. Vronsky was tired, so he lay down to take a nap. He had a strange dream about a dirty old peasant who was bending over and talking to himself in French. This dream frightened Vronsky, but when he woke up, he thought that he was being very silly. Then he looked at his watch and saw that it was 8 o'clock. He would have to hurry to meet Anna before her husband came back home. When Vronsky knocked on Anna's front door, the servant opened it and gave him a surprised look. Then it was Vronsky's turn to be surprised as Karenin appeared. Karenin stopped and looked at Vronsky with a stern look of disapproval. Then he stepped outside and made his way to a waiting carriage, acting as if Vronsky were not there.
If he fought me, I could do something.
Thought Vronsky.
But he makes me feel like a snake in the grass.
Vronsky went inside the house and found Anna in the hall.
What was your husband doing here?
Asked Vronsky. He was away, but he came back for something unexpectedly, said Anna. I'm sorry you met each other.
Tell me about this illness,
said Vronsky.
Is it because you are expecting our child soon?
Anna smiled in a gentle way. Soon, our problems will be over. We shall all be at peace.
What do you mean?
Asked Vronsky. I will die in childbirth, said Anna. I know it. Last night, I dreamed that there was a dirty old peasant who was bending over. He was muttering in French. I was so frightened. That's when I knew I would die in childbirth. Vronsky remembered his own dream, and for a second he was also terrified. Then he shook himself and said,
What nonsense! You should not believe your dreams.
The next morning, Karenin walked into Anna's bedroom without knocking.
"The only thing I asked you to do,"
Karenin said to Anna,
"is not to receive your lover in our house. Now that you have disobeyed me, I will divorce you and take your son away. He will go and live at my sister's."
Anna grabbed her husband's arm and cried, "Please, leave me, Seryoza." Karenin only pulled his hand free and left the room. He went to Moscow on business for 3 days. In Moscow, Karenin was walking out of the office of a high government official when he heard someone calling his name. He looked around and saw Oblonsky. Karenin was not happy to see his wife's brother. Oblonsky ran over to speak with him.
"Why didn't you tell us you would be in Moscow?"
He said.
"We're having a dinner party tomorrow night. Come over between 5 and 6 o'clock.
Karenin hesitated. Then he said,
"I can't come to your house. I don't mean to be rude. It's just, I am going to divorce your sister."
Oblonsky had heard rumors that there were problems between his sister and her husband. Now he knew those rumors were true, but he did not want to believe them. He said,
"No, it's not possible. Anna is such a fine and splendid woman. There must be some misunderstanding." "I wish it were just a misunderstanding,"
replied Karenin.